Welcome to the podcast, everybody. Today I have actor and martial arts expert Lis LoCascio. Lis was in my film Fractals, which I made over the summer and am currently in post-production of. She's an excellent talent, and I really wanted to get her on the record, get her story on the record. And so here's my first podcast with Lis, and I hope there will be many more after. Enjoy. Thanks. So, how's it going? How you been?
How's it been? It's a loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've been pretty good with everything. I'm not really sure. But overall, I feel like I'm doing pretty good with things. How about you? How are you doing?
Uh, I I'm learning a lot about politics,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm learning a lot about how much I've really slowed down in terms of my creative process.
Mm.
Because I used to do this thing where like I could shoot a film in the morning, edit in the afternoon, and have it out by dinner time.
Yeah.
And I'm nowhere near done with even the first pass assembly of this project, which we worked on. And so, yeah, it's just this realization that wow, I'm not as desperate as I used to be in terms of feeling like I have to get it done quickly, And yeah, it's a very strange feeling.
Actually, I'm kind of with you on that. I totally understand. I'm actually going to turn back on my camera because I like looking at your picture. So
Okay, sure,
redirection. I hope that's okay. But no, I'm Oh, yeah. Hey, there you are. Yeah.
whatever, I'll do it.
It's connection. I'm like, I need to stare at something. I'm just looking at the URL and I'm like, I can't URL anymore.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. You can totally put your picture on if you're uncomfortable or whatever. I know it's a podcast, but no, I totally understand what you're saying. I think this year I've been so much more hands off with the art side of things that I'm just like, I'm very much at peace with it because I'm just like, it's all going to come together and there's no need to rush anything. It's very weird.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the fact that I'm a few months away from 40, or if like I want to make sure my audio is being captured by the right microphone,
Yeah.
or if the fact that I spent so many years really learning other craft moves that I I'm almost a little more fulfilled than I would have been before. Like before, I never would have thought to build my own sets like I did with this one, or build my own
Yeah, yeah.
props like I did with this one. And I'm wondering too if maybe because I've went so far into all these other various crafts that helped quell the desperation. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's just definitely a time of expansion, I feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like there is two ways to go with this time period. Is either, and of course, turning 40, that's like a big milestone. But then even just during this time, it's either you can look at it as a meaning of like hopelessness and all is lost, it's a waste of a fucking year, or how can I grow during this time where I'm being forced to do nothing and restrained?
yeah.
And
And I've definitely pulled the trigger on growth and productivity during this.
yeah,
Like last spring when it started, I'm like, fucking great. Like not great that people are dying, but great that I one of my favorite pieces of literature is from this French author Louis Ferdinand Céline. He's often just referred to as Céline, and he wrote about how he just wishes everybody in Paris would stop so he could catch his breath,
mm,
stop for a moment, so he could just get some semblance of peace. And I always loved that quote because I'd always wanted New York City to stop so I could catch up. I felt like I
yeah,
didn't know where culture was going, and I could never seem to like get get it together in time. I was always a little late with my ideas, and I feel like as soon as New York literally stopped last spring, I turned out 5 screenplays, first drafts, so not like great screenplays, but one of them ended up being refined into something that I think I'm going to submit to some awards. But then also, like, we ended up making our film this summer. And I never really did a proper introduction. So for everybody,
I was just so excited to see somebody. I haven't really talked to somebody during this fucking pandemic, so I'm just like, shit, let's talk.
Yeah, same. I was just like, oh, we're having a conversation. Everybody who's been listening straight through since I started this thing, so far has only met Sean Mannix, another actor on the project. And so what I'm trying to do is get everybody from Fractals on at least once, but however frequently they want, to just kind of introduce people to my collaborators. And so everybody, this is Lis LoCascio, and she's the ass kicker of the project. And she literally kicks our main character's ass, beats him to the curb, and it's a totally badass moment in the movie.
I love how the scene came out. It looks really good.
Oh, thanks. And that's without sound design. And without, I haven't finessed the cuts yet. That's just me peppering in the shots that I selected. And so, yeah, I love the way that sequence came out. I love how it's tonally just kind of, it's literally overcast, but tonally this feels like overcast. And then there's this intense moment where he's getting the shit kicked out of him for no apparent reason. And then it's back to that tonal overcast. And I don't know, it's just, I never would have predicted that. And what I was thinking about yesterday was, as I was assembling it, I'm an hour and 20 minutes in now, and we're nowhere near like the end. So it's going to be a really long movie. But I was just thinking, my goal was to make something I couldn't personally predict. And so I couldn't answer a lot of questions to a lot of the actors that were asking me all these really important questions that directors should know. And I'm like, I don't know because I'm trying not to predict this thing, which is kind of a strange approach. But at the same time, I'm like looking at this movie and I'm like, wow, this is like, I have no idea what this movie is. I love it. And that was the goal. I wanted to make something I didn't predict. And I think I'm going to have that because it's so not what the first riddle, like this is basically a movie about this guy who's an artist going around the city, finding riddles and solving those riddles. And each riddle takes him to the next one. First riddle isn't introduced until an hour in.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like all, I wouldn't say it's set up, but it's just familiarizing people with sort of the art life and sort of the oppression of not succeeding in the arts, which was kind of the root of it anyway. Right. But I kind of like that it's out of structure, out of format that way. But I'm interested to see how long it ends up actually being.
Yeah. Seeing how it all comes together and everything. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. So let's talk about you.
Oh.
I want people to know about you.
Okay.
So let's start with background. Where'd you grow up?
Where I grew up was Hunterdon County, basically like farmland, New Jersey. That's
it. Well, I mean, Jersey has some beautiful farmland.
It really does, and when I was growing up in it, I didn't really like it. Now being older, I really miss that type of area. So yeah, I'm more of like a nature girl than a city person. So it's something I've learned to miss.
How long have you been away?
Oh my gosh. So let's see. I went away to college at the College of New Jersey. So I was in Trenton over there. And then I moved to Florida for a year. I also lived in Pennsylvania for a year. And then I went back after I moved from Florida. I had like a whole long journey. And then I moved to Jersey City. I've been here for about 7 years. And I think, 7 years now I've been in Jersey City. And I'm hoping in June to move somewhere else that's a little bit more nature infused. But like still close enough to get to the city when I need to.
Yeah. How have you ever considered like doing going to the West Coast? Just out of curiosity.
I'm so torn on the West Coast. I'm so torn on it. I don't have a pull to go over there. I don't know why. And there's some people who are like, oh, you shouldn't go to California unless you're invited out there. Like I have an older brother who's in California, but he had like a project that pulled him over there. For me, I've just never been particularly drawn to it. I was actually talking to a friend the other day or just like a person I usually talk to. I've been redefining what friends are this pandemic. That's like a whole nother topic. I was thinking about like England, because I think Europe has some of the best projects too. So I've been very, very torn on this whole thing.
Yeah, I like that idea of invitation. It's actually a part of Fractals where he has this voiceover about people being invited to New York as well.
Yeah.
Because when I first went to LA, I wasn't invited by anyone, but somebody we knew had set us up with meetings, and we hadn't realized that they were all people who didn't want those meetings until we got there. And then the second time I went, I had been able to, over the course of the years in between, network with people who were based out there. And so I'm just like, well, I'm going to go out there and interview these people. Actually, you listen to one of the podcasts with Matthew.
Yeah.
So that was filmed out in Santa Monica as a documentary. And by that point, though, I had been invited by these Future of Film conference to kind of just set up shop at the conference. And it made a world of difference in terms of networking out there. So I think you're right about the whole invitation thing.
Yeah.
And in New York, I wasn't invited. I just moved here, and it took many years for me to find the right people to start working with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a weird thing to just this idea of showing up somewhere. And
Yeah, you have to like really navigate the jungle.
yeah.
I always wanted to be an actor, but I never pursued it until my mid-20s. And I literally started from the bottom, and you have to navigate through so much bullshit to really start to understand the process and like the people to talk to, which even then, like I still don't really fully have that, but you start to know what direction you should be going into and like what to avoid and the places to be. It's a very long process.
Yeah. I almost feel like, I mean, this is true with all arts where you kind of have to have somebody approve your entry into it. But
Yeah.
acting is probably the most brutal, without question. And I almost feel like it's designed to constantly resist. And if you can resist all of the resistance, then maybe you can get a foot in. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know why it's like that. It just is what it is. But man, is the one reason I never bothered to really hardcore pursue submitting myself to places. Because I do have the acting bug to some degree. I just don't like the idea of having to submit to being approved that way.
Oh, I know that it's a whole nasty process, but it's like you learn. I don't know. I've learned to not really be fazed by it anymore. Because it's just like, especially like, I went to acting school at Esper Studio, and like those people really humble you, and they like, they're not. I love that school because they really push you to like take constructive criticism, to be told when you're not on point with something, and that's really beneficial. And then you just kind of learn that either you are what somebody's looking for or you're not what they're looking for. And sometimes like you want to pull your hair out because you're like, come on, like I'm a fucking perfect fit. But it's just not the way it works. You can be the best actor in the room, but you have blonde hair instead of red hair,
Oh yeah. You just end up not being
like
the type.
that. Yeah.
and the funny part is these supposedly really highly creative people can't envision you with that hair. Oh,
Yeah.
what do you mean we
or
could dye
wig.
the hair? Yeah. And it's so weird. What are there things about? So you've been doing this enough now. I see your earliest credit on IMDb goes back to 2014.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a good chunk of time to have been doing this. Is there anything that you couldn't have predicted? Like, what is it? What did you think it was going to be like versus what it's like? And it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be both.
You know what? So, like, the positive aspect of things, I didn't think I could actually make what I set out to do happen. So, I remember, like, the whole journey that started. I specifically left my career as a case manager. I was working in child welfare case manager, and I said, I want to be in action movies. And like, and I was like, this is the direction I need to go into. I feel like I could make more of a difference in the world, and I'm going to do this. And I moved in with my mother, who I hadn't lived with since I was like 16 years old. It was terrible. And I can't tell you how many times I was in a fetal position because I thought, what the fuck am I doing? I have friends who just graduated college. You know, we all graduated college. They're getting married. You know, they're in their settled careers. And here I am moving back in with my mother, starting from the ground. And I had this crazy idea of doing action movies and training in martial arts and being an actress and doing this stuff. I didn't actually think I'd fucking be doing that. So I ended up, like, my journey, I think life is a journey. I really do feel like life is a journey. And I think if you're very open to it, things will happen to you and it will be created. So when I ended up getting to Jersey City, I had some weird ass shit that led me to the school that I currently train at now. Like, I literally was teaching a class, I was a substitute teacher, and I was reading a book with the kids about Bruce Lee. And at this time, I had already looked at different schools. Nothing was like connecting with me. And I was like, God, I can't find the school that I actually want. And these kids had to read a book about who is Bruce Lee. They didn't give two fucks about the book. I'm like, guys, we got to read this book. This guy's fucking amazing. Who?
How old were these kids?
They were like in fifth grade.
Hey, these guys are fucking amazing.
Yeah, I was like, and I didn't know about this. I'm a girl. I was raised not in a family that went through this stuff. I had brothers, but they weren't like guys, if that makes sense. Like, they weren't the boys. I wasn't raised on this stuff, and I'm reading this. I'm like, holy shit, guys, this guy is amazing. And then I ended up looking it up, and I found out that there was a school literally 2 miles from like where I lived. And which apparently is very rare to find a good Jeet Kune Do school. I didn't know. I wasn't aware of this shit. So, so then that journey led me there. And then all of a sudden, like, things start happening. I mean, obviously there's more to the story of this journey, but I actually sometimes have to take a step back because I remember I had a movie came out. I don't know if you saw it. I had a movie come out, Apart from the Rest. It was this really great sci-fi short film. And I mean, it was CGI, intense fight scene. I mean, it was really intense work. And it was, it has been probably my favorite film at this point because of everything in that film is a culmination of everything I set out to do. And it's fucking weird because I'm like, holy shit, I was in a fetal position at the age of like 24 years old, wondering how the fuck I was going to go from here to there. And I actually did it. So that's been part of the journey, I guess. And I'm now completely blanking on your original question of like, the thing is, the other parts of things like I didn't expect was like the loneliness. This journey is extremely lonely, and I anticipate that. So I've actually, I think that was the hardest part is I'm at a point now, I had a very eye-opening experience this week where I realized that I really don't have family or friends. And I've accepted this. I made a very, detachment to everyone this week where I realized it really is just me. There's no one in my life right now that I consider like family or friends. And I think that gave me a lot of peace because I've been trying to hold on to these attachments that were actually really toxic. And I've learned that it really has just been me throughout this whole journey and that I haven't had anyone there. I've been doing this on my own. And it's that's something that this type of stuff doesn't really prepare you for because, you're literally doing what everyone else is not doing.
Yeah.
Literally going in a direction where everybody else is doing the simple, they're doing their career. Some find success real early. Some people want to get married. They have the house, they have the kids, which is great. These are all things I definitely want. But because I'm stalling and putting other things first, I don't have those things. So now I can't really relate to people on certain levels. And I don't really relate to all artists because there's a lot of different characteristics I don't fully relate to. So it's just that loneliness was something I was not aware of. And to experience it on such a deep level, that was a very hard lesson. That was a very hard lesson. And now I'm like actually at peace with it, where I'm happy about that lesson.
You
Did that
know,
answer your question? I feel like went all over the place there.
no, that was perfect. And
Okay.
honestly, you're like, I'm like, preach, you know,
Yeah.
there's so many people who feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically like my last project, this project, and probably my next 10 projects
Yeah.
are going to be rooted in sort of conveying that that's the truth of pursuing anything worthwhile. To me,
Yes.
you're going to become lonely because
Yeah.
most people they pull the trigger on safety.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard temptation when to not compare yourself, to doubt yourself when you see everybody you went to school with, setting up shop differently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just, you feel alone, but you're not, because everybody who's trying to do anything worth a damn is going through the same thing.
Right. Right. Right.
And man, like everybody I went to school with are married. I'm not married, but
Yeah.
they're also not working jobs that I would ever want to work. Some are
Yeah.
insurance, some are working for a construction company. These are all fine professions
Yeah. Of
if you
course.
enjoy them, and that definitely society needs them. But I would never do that. I would never want to do that. I want to do something that nobody I grew up with, nobody I knew growing up would ever want to do. And
Right.
of
Right.
course, I'm doing that at the cost of not being able to relate to them moving forward. And I learned that hard lesson actually this past year, because I've been trying to set up. So 20 years ago, roughly, I made a short film with some of the people back in my hometown, because I was still living there at the time. And it was an action movie. And we had, helicopters, we had special effects, we had
Wow.
car chases. And I just did a 20th anniversary restoration. And the idea was to show the restoration 20 years and then also have a sequel that we did 20 years later. But everybody has moved on in such a way that I couldn't get it together. Even with this, last year I had resources that I was willing to put into it. And even with that, it just, I don't know. I guess I kind of solidified my life in a way where I could continue being how I was 20 years ago. Everybody else moved on from that. And
Yeah.
I call it adulting, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just, I realize that all these people I used to relate to, who I used to be able to inspire to do creative things, I can't do that anymore. So now it's like, okay, so who has decided to pursue this life and has grown into this idea of a life of creativity, a journey, if you will,
Yeah.
or I even call myself a lifelong learner. I love that term.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think those are the people who are going to end up coming on board in the future. And unfortunately, it wasn't the people I started with, and that's fine. I mean, time and time again, I hear stories about people having to leave sort of what they knew behind, people being left behind. That sort of, oh, I remember when he used to do stuff, or they used to do stuff in our town, but now they're long gone. And they're long gone because they went and did it on their own. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't, yeah.
It's true. I think, and that was like the epiphany I had this week is like, I detached from all these relationships because I realized it's time to find my actual tribe, because I can't relate to anyone
Yeah.
that once was a friend or is family. I'm like, I need to find people I relate to and who want to do the things that I want to do, and can have these kind of conversations on this deeper level. Because the people I did associate with, I'm like, I can't have that with them.
Yeah. And who respects, like, I respect what you're saying to me. I get it. I feel it.
Yeah.
And there, there were people, who I haven't talked to, family members who I haven't talked to in over 5 years, because when I try to convey to them like what I'm going through, they're like, well, why don't you just come back and, go to work at whatever.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just like, that's not an option.
That's not. Yeah, that's
Like,
my constant lecture. I had an issue with a family member this week where I just basically like blew up at them because I was like, I'm done. And one of them is always, oh, you may not be able to have kids one day or 5 years from now. Like, I'd be like, there's certain things I'm working towards right now. And it's like, one of them is about kids. And it's like, they're literally telling me like my body may not be able to have kids, like the most insensitive things you can possibly think of. And then they'll proceed to compare me to my siblings and their relationships. And then they'll compare me to their best friend's son who met someone in 3 months and now they're getting engaged. And I'm like, okay, that's fucking wonderful for them. But I'm just like, that's not, I can't stop everything I'm doing to make you happy for this one thing that I want.
yeah.
Now, it's
That's the kind of stuff that gets under my skin too, because it's like,
yeah,
I don't know, if I had a kid, I would
Yeah.
want them to be as successful as they want to be in whatever they want,
absolutely.
no matter what. And
Absolutely.
I don't know, I never understood family members that do that try to say, hey, this is what you should be doing with your life.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I had like a profound moment in February, because I told you I had surgery last week, this dental surgery. It started in February, and like my whole face blew up, and like I had to have a tooth removed. It was like an infection, and also I got like punched in the face from training. But I think it was an infection, because I'm not going to excuse. I don't really think it was that big of a deal. But it was like a whole thing. And this same family member was lecturing me about my choices, my life. Like at that point, I was going to walk away from acting at that moment. And I was going to move back home with them again and like, reconsider my whole life. And then thank God this fucking pandemic happened. Thank God it happened. Because I mean, and then like, I'm not saying that because like, oh, these people died. Like that's terrible,
Yeah,
right?
you can't control that.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, this pandemic was the best thing that happened in my life. It was exactly what I needed. What you said before, things just slowed down in the right way. But right as the pandemic was about to start, I started to realize I'm like, I really do love this journey. I love who I've become. I love everything I've achieved at this moment, and I'm still not done with everything I've achieved. And it's crazy because then I knew if I moved in with this person, I would be going back to something I proudly walked away from. So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. It really is.
So you got punched, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was a light tap. Technically, the
Yeah.
already infected. I'm terrified of the dentist. I'll be honest with you. So
Well, what I'm realizing is we haven't talked about the one thing about you. I mean, there's a million things about you I want to talk about, but you're a fighter. We
yeah,
haven't told people that.
yeah, I mean, like, because I haven't really put it out as much anymore, especially like again with this whole pandemic. Like, I was paused on training because of the surgery I had to do. I thought I was moving, so I already said goodbye to my seafood at this point. It was like really crazy, and then yeah, so currently. Again, I'm in a little bit of recovery, but I'm returning this week. I study Jeet Kune Do and Kali, and I do Wing Chun. I just haven't been actively studying it since this pandemic started because we've been doing virtual training. So my main focus has been Jeet Kune Do and Kali. But yeah, so that's what I train in, martial arts. That's my thing.
How'd you get into that?
Oh gosh. So I started with Taekwondo when I was younger. That was like my family kind of pushed that on me. My dad pulled me out. I will always tell this story. My dad pulled me out right before my black belt test because he didn't want his little girl training for her black belt because I guess my brother got his ass kicked during his black belt training competition. So there's some sexism there for you, my family.
Yeah.
I always hold that story over his head to this day when I talk to him. So yeah, when I was a case manager, I actually had one of my teenagers was raped. And I remember she said to me, I thought I could take them. And I was like, holy shit. That was something I always thought too. I thought if someone attacked me, no problem, I can take them. And when she said that to me, that was like, it kind of had like this deep impact on me, those words. And I thought, wow, where I really can't take them. And at that moment, this was also, I was going through a lot in Florida. And do you want to hear the whole story?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so this is something like I'm very open book with my journey. So I was dating a guy in college. He became a heroin addict while we were dating. It was crazy. It was a back and forth relationship. He ended up relapsing, moving to Florida. When I was in college, I was at the end of college when technically we're broken up. I was trying to get into doctorate programs for psychology and I got rejected. We ended up working things out. I moved to Florida to be with him. He was clean. And for this year, I was a child welfare case manager. During this time, that girl said that I had cases blowing up. He ends up relapsing. And at that moment, that's when I was like, I've done everything according to society's plan. I've done the career. I was in that relationship. I've done everything correct. I'm not making a difference here. And I want to be like a leader. And that's what drove me to being an actor. But more importantly is I wanted to be an inspiration. Because whoever I was on screen, I wanted to make sure that's also who I was off screen. I didn't want to just put on a facade. I wanted to make sure that if I was going to present a strong person, that is who I become. So it became very important to me to actually be an action person. So I wanted to train in martial arts. I wanted to develop myself physically, mentally, and emotionally for that. So that's actually what pushed me into the whole martial arts and everything. Yeah. It's like, yeah, and so that's why like this journey is so important, because it holds so much meaning why I'm here and why I've done exactly what I've done.
Yeah, I saw that on your website. You brand yourself with the journey.
Yeah,
I really love that.
Yeah, I had a whole vlog on it, and I stopped doing the vlog because I really wanted to teach other people how to do this journey. And I have to find a way to bring that back out there. That's actually what I'm doing right now is I'm getting skills. Yeah, podcast.
Start a podcast.
Yeah.
They're fun.
Debating. They're really fun. Yeah, I find them very educational and interesting to listen to, especially while you're riding a train or something. So that's something I might have to do.
Yeah, I'd been wanting to start one, and I actually I started one off and on over the past few years, but it was really during the pandemic that I invested in it. I'd say if that's what you want to do, that's the best medium for it at this point, because people can easily digest them. Most people don't like reading, unfortunately. They're also just like, you do them, put them up, and then you can spend the rest of your day doing whatever you want,
Yeah.
I also just like love the idea that the ultimate business goal is action.
Yeah.
Like I never met anybody in the New York actors scene who were interested in just going after action movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely developed over time because, I've become more in love with the acting, and the fight scenes have become more of like like it's part of that. That's what I want, but I also become more interested in showing more acting range. But originally, the main end goal is I want to do action films, and I've done some action films, and now I'm like, now I want to expand because I know I talked to you about that. Action films become very redundant.
I have one for you. Hold on. I'm not. After we're done, we'll stay on and I'll tell you about it. But
okay, I love it.
I do have one here. I've been working on it since we talked.
Awesome.
It's badass too.
Oh, I trust you on that.
Okay. After we're done with this episode, we'll stay on and I'll tell you about it.
All right, excellent. I like that. Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. It's like action was always like the end point, but now that I've been exposed to so much with acting, I'm like, oh, you know what? I also really want to do some of these kind of roles and this kind of role, but action always has been like very important to me.
Yeah, it's going back to the thing about now I want to do this. Once you feed the bug, it nests, it nests in the brain.
Like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. Like I've seen I'm obsessed with Helena Bonham Carter. I think she's wonderful. And some of the things she does, she plays crazy so well. And I'm like, holy shit, I would love to do a role like her, or
Yeah.
something intense and interesting. Cause I'm just like, wow, now we can do stuff like this.
My two favorite roles of hers, obviously Fight Club.
Of course.
But when she played, I don't know, do you watch Doctor Who?
I have not seen Doctor Who. You can judge.
So Doctor Who has this old blue police box from like London. I don't know what era of London they use these police boxes, but that's his time machine. That's his spaceship. All it does is disappear and reappear wherever he wants, whenever he wants. And at some point, many, many seasons later, we learn that the machine is sentient and that it's totally head over heels in love with him. And that sentience sort of becomes portrayed by Helena Bonham Carter. And it's the best version of Helena crazy you could possibly wish for. Yeah. It helps to watch a few episodes of it. I'm not saying you got to blow through all the seasons because the show dates back to the 60s, but it's still current. But if you familiarize yourself with some of the various people who've played the Doctor and sort of the weird vibe of it, and then eventually when you get to this episode, which was, I think this episode is written by Neil Gaiman. You just like, oh, it makes perfect sense that she is his time machine. Yeah.
Out. I mean, I keep hearing good things about Doctor Who, and I just never like watched it, but I'll check it out because she does some amazing stuff. Like of course, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Like I love her as Bellatrix Lestrange. Like just what she does, when she moves her body and like delivers her lines. It's just very like, oh, it's just so fascinating.
Yeah, she's very, very aware of her stage, her lens, her just kind of how her presence is interacting with the scenery, and
Yeah.
how she's capable of moving in a way where it almost manipulates other actors to move and almost like clearing the way in opposition of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you uncomfortable. I mean, isn't that the beauty of acting? I think that's what I learned about Esper Studio is when I first started there is they made me really aware that just to push things and to create a reaction in people or to do things that causes something. It's just so fascinating.
Yeah. So you've gone through studio program or acting program.
Yeah.
How'd you find it? How'd you settle on it? What's it like?
Oh gosh. Okay, that's another story. And I feel bad. We're talking a lot about me. We're gonna have to talk about you
We
too.
could go back and forth. I think there are people out there who know that there's something off about their life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is something they're considering. Maybe this is something for them.
Yeah.
I want to introduce them to people who might inspire them to
Yeah.
pull the trigger on a life change that would be positive for them. And so the idea is to unpack these stories. That's all.
Okay.
And
Awesome. No, I appreciate
to
it.
use everybody's story as an example of.
I
hey,
love it.
this
I love
happened.
it.
Yeah.
This is it's so wonderful. I've been looking forward to this. So I was really happy we got to meet up today. For Esper Studio, what happened was, and this is why I've kind of walked away from so much weight being put onto action films, is, I was focusing a lot on my training and all those type of things. And I had something personal happen. It's always something personal happen, some sort of traumatic experience that makes you kind of like wake up and says, I need direction. And something like that happened one summer, and I realized I needed to put more weight towards my acting. Because this really, at the end of the day, I wanted to make a career out of acting, not martial arts. I wanted martial arts to be sprinkled in there, but into acting. So I started looking for schools, and I remember I auditioned for one. I was still having a hard time, and then what happened was I came across Esper Studio. I didn't really know much about it, And I mean, it turns out to be a really great school. I was very lucky. And for their process, you had to like fill out an application, write like a small little essay, and read this book. This book was probably like over 200 pages on, you know, the school and like the first year of learning at the school. And so I then get called in for an interview, and I lied on my application that I read the book. They're like, "Oh, did you read this book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." So I find out, then they're like, "Oh yeah, we can see you, you know, tomorrow for the interview." I was like, "Oh fuck!" So I didn't read the book. I don't know what to do. I literally read, and I couldn't obviously go to a store and buy the book. I needed to buy it right there, so I bought it online on the screen, and I'm reading the book for in one whole day. I managed to read this book, this over 200-page book. I mean, I was literally, if you've ever stared at a computer screen that long, you're not seeing straight. So for 2 days, I was seeing dots, screen dots. And I read this book. I go to the interview, and the guy who's interviewing me is Leith. He's a really talented guy. He's actually in the show Rami, that, you know, won awards and everything. Really great dude. And it was funny is that he says, "Oh, my name's Leith. How you doing?" And I was like, "Leith, you're in the book." I was like, "Leith, I know who you are." He's like, I thought you were old because, you know, this guy was in the book. He's like, "Yeah, no, I don't look like the person in the book." He's like, "That's how I know you read the book." We never talked about the fucking book after that. Like, it was only because I recognized his name in the book. That's how he knew I read the book. And so anyway, we talked, and I was like, holy shit, I'm literally going cross-eyed because I was staring at a computer screen for this book, panicking that there was a test on this process. And that's all you needed to know, was that your name was there. So yeah, like that was a really easy process. They knew I was into martial arts. They told me about this woman who's on the show Vikings. I can't remember her name. She went to Esper Studio, and she had to really prove herself because she mainly came in as like this beautiful woman with this martial arts background. She had to prove herself as an actor. So that was like a really cool thing. I was like, cool, I'm coming into there, you know, not really being like an actor person. I'm coming in background. And I mean, this school really, I mean, it literally tore me upside down and twisted me around and everything. It was a very intense acting program. I did it for 2 years. All I could afford was the acting. I couldn't afford movement. I couldn't afford any of the other classes. And it was a very intense process, like learning how to just completely like emotionally vomit the first year on these extreme levels, which to me gave me the greatest freedom I had never knew I could experience. I didn't know how to release all these things. I didn't know how to go. And I just like, I had a great teacher both years really, but my first teacher, he literally reminded me of Al Pacino. This guy, John Fry, I hope I'm saying his name right. But he reminded me of Al Pacino. He was so damn cool. I was so grateful to have him. And he really let us just like, you know, go all out, go extreme, you know, do it. That was the whole purpose, is to really release all those emotions with these different activities. And I said, I'm going to come up with some of the craziest fucking things to put in this classroom. And I did. I came up with some crazy fucking ideas. And it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. The second year was very hard for me, though. The second year, I had another great teacher, David Newer, and I had to learn a lot. It was a very humbling experience. And I learned a lot from that teacher as well, like how to pull things back in. Now that you've released everything, how do we pull things back in? How do we relate to people? How do we, you know, just live through the moments and the journey? And wow, I mean, I walked away there from like being just a completely new person and having this deep appreciation for acting that I didn't know actually existed. And that's why now I've expanded my views beyond just martial arts, because I'm like, wow, there's roles that I really want to play now that I realize I can play. And it was cool. It's very cool.
When you start out in one of these, I see, you know, obviously I see a lot of actor resumes, and I see that everybody's
Yeah.
been through some kind of studio program.
Yeah.
What happens like on day one? You
They,
go in, you go into the studio. You've never been to something like this before, right? What's happening? What kind of room are you in? What kind of people are there?
Oh, gosh, you always have different people, right?
Paint the picture. Paint the picture.
So you've got people, I'm just gonna be honest. I mean, I've been to different types of places. This one was the most intense one. And you've got people who are very, how do I say this nicely? Because I'm not gonna put me on the spot. A wide range of people, right? You've got people who think they know better. You've got people who are going to worship everything that's said. You got people who are addicted to going to school and who don't actually do application. And then, of course, you always got a great model in there who thinks that they're God's gift to the world. So those are always the fun people that I can't stand.
So let's go to one back. The people who are addicted to school but
Yeah, that's a
don't
big one.
apply it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, sorry, what were we going to say?
So that's the person I seem to run into a lot, and who time and time again I find some of them are really talented,
Yeah,
but they can't stop taking classes and actually go to work.
yeah.
And it pains me because there are so many people I want to work with and time and time again, it's I'm enrolled in this, don't have time. I'm enrolled in this, I don't have time. And at what point are they not going to enroll and actually start doing films or plays or it's so weird it's almost like a life of just going to acting class.
Yeah, I mean, you see this in real life too. How many people just go back for their masters, go for their doctorate, go for another master's, go for certificates, but they're not like actually doing anything. School just becomes a safety zone. And I definitely see this a lot where I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of people, if not almost all the people I went to school with, I have not seen them post anything about films, auditions, nothing.
Yeah.
Me and like one other person, she was an older woman, we're the only ones who have actually done stuff. And that's why like I had the hardest time being in school at sometimes, especially my second year, because I knew I was going to school with people who haven't had experience. And some of them were actually a lot younger than me. They're like using this as a replacement for college. And I had more experience. And I'm not knocking anybody. It's just that I knew, like, I've literally been on set. I know what set is like. So it always like cracked me up that these kids would show up either hungover, they would show up late, they would show up like not giving a fuck, and or they'd be super serious about following to T what the teacher's saying. But I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to really work in like the actual setting of being on film, being on TV. Like this is not realistic. Like they'll complain about certain expectations, and I'm like, yeah, you get to set, you're gonna be on set for 12 hours, buddy. Like it's not going to be this easy, you know?
Well, expectations has been one of my main
Yeah.
sort of filters now, because I used to run into so many people who, they did a lot of indie films, but they've never really done the professional work. They sort of say, oh, I'm a professional, I've been doing this long enough. What I do now is I try to look at for what their expectations are. So one of the interesting things, for example, is, on a typical professional film set, it takes up to 3 months to get paid. That's like almost the minimum for a union project. And basically, if they start complaining because they haven't been paid that day or that week, I'm like, oh, so you don't know, like, that this is not, like, usually when I am in a position where I can pay some of my actors, because I am a micro budget, it depends on the project, but it's usually 2 weeks, or it's usually like the day I wrap, because I'm the one that's also running human resources. But like, it's basically like, if an actor expects it that day, then they don't have as much experience as they're touting that they have.
Yeah.
And that's sort of that's red flag number one. But I think it really does come down to expectations. I was watching this behind the scenes documentary about that movie, The King of Staten Island. Have you seen the trailer for that? It's with I forget his name, this guy from SNL. and it's a comedy by Judd Apatow, and the main actor's uncle was in it as like a side character, and
That was Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi's in it. Yeah, he
Yeah,
plays a
it's
fireman.
Pete something, right? That Pete who dated.
Pete Davidson, yeah, that's his name.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have seen
So
this trailer.
I
Yeah.
guess Pete Davidson's uncle or grandfather or somebody is in it, and he didn't get paid for literally 3 months, and he was so kind. The story is he was kind of weirded out by it, and he goes, "Well, a job's a job, shouldn't you just get paid when you do the job?" And he's like, "That's not how the administrative aspects of film work." And I thought that's a great example of that I probably am going to use moving forward, where like I almost want to test people like, all right, administratively, how long has it taken for your various projects to pay you? And then see what people come up with. And are they just going to come up with their wish? They're sort of, well, I wish I could get paid the day of, or are they going to come up with realistic scenarios? And because I do run into a lot of people who just haven't worked enough, I guess, to understand that aspect of filmmaking is administratively really complex, and it takes a long time to get anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't worked on a project big enough where it's been like 3 months. I think the most I waited was just like a couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, that's what I usually try for. If not a couple of weeks, then literally the day after wrap.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't like the feeling of having stuff left over to do before I
Yeah.
start the edit. But yeah, I was blown away that even in a big production like The King of Staten Island, they still have those issues with people.
Right, right, right. Well, I mean, that's the other thing too is there's also the flip side of things, especially when you're starting out, having this major like expectation that you're only able to do paid projects. And like if you're first starting, and I see that a lot where I'm just like, okay. Like now, like I know for me, I'm in a position where unless the project is extremely unique or it's something I haven't done before, like with you, when we reached out, it was during a pandemic. I want to fucking act, and I know your shit was good. So I was like, yes, let's work together. I don't care if I'm getting paid, if I'm not getting paid. I just want to do something. But like that was wonderful when we were talking to each other, and I appreciate that production.
But I hooked you up anyway.
Oh yeah, you did, which was amazing. But
Yeah.
I had zero expectations.
Well, what I did was what I'm trying to do is
Yeah.
have them come in with a lower set of expectations than I can give
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Which that even works too. But I mean, especially if you're starting out, though, you shouldn't expect to get paid. You
Yeah.
kind of have to do the dirty work. And I think a lot of people. I listened to Conan O'Brien, his podcast. I love his podcast, and they talk with these comedians who have to pay for their set when they first started out, who have to, they have to put up a fee because they're not getting paid when they're first starting out their careers. And I think it's the same thing. Don't understand is that when you're first starting out your career in these arts, you're not going to get paid. You have to do these shitty kind of quality projects. You kind of have to put this reel together. You kind of have to almost prove yourself to start getting paid. And there's a lot of entitlement that is not yet like, you kind of have to just earn it. And people don't really understand that part when they start out, especially like the young ones, or those people that you go to school with, or you're in those training sessions with them. You kind of think they're going to get handed money. No.
Yeah, that's a problem on the crew side too.
Oh yeah.
People just came out of film school, zero experience whatsoever. Maybe they made a film in film school. Maybe they made a short video when they were in high school. Never served another creative, right?
Yeah.
And so they haven't been trained to make a movie that way. To make a movie where you're not making all the decisions here. It's so weird to me. The ego. I don't know where it comes from either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I see it a lot on Facebook, like those Facebook groups. I joined some with like the film and like acting, and so many people give such an attitude when there's no money being offered, and I'm like, you're literally like in an indie film group, like
Yeah.
you can't expect that. If you're looking to build your reel, you kind of have to take that.
It's interesting too because some of the what I consider to be the best independent films, the best art house films, came from people who just did it for the sake of it. Like time and time again, I'd meet some of these older filmmakers. By older, I mean 5 years or older, 5 years older than me or above,
Yeah.
where like, they knew a director of photography who had his own 16 millimeter camera rig, and he used his camera rig for professional stuff on Monday through Friday, and on weekends would loan it out to his neighbor filmmakers so they could make their movies. Now it's you expect to be able to rent it. You expect to have it rented. And I almost I feel like we could, like, as saturated as the indie film market is, we could actually have better projects out there if we kind of went back to this whole for the sake of it thing, because it is really like I don't know where this new mentality is rooted. I think it might just be parents pressuring their kids to make money at it or don't do it. And that's a whole other conversation, but like, I don't know. It's unreal. It is pretty unrealistic to think that a micro budget out of pocket film is going to be able to pay everyone a living wage.
Yeah.
I just, as much as it pains me to say that, that's the reality. And, I wish it wasn't. Like, I've said it on this podcast before. Like, if I had the financing, I'd probably be the most irresponsible business owner in terms of just giving everybody the best benefits, the best pay. It's just, in America, the funding isn't there. And I think that if we're going to keep doing projects, we have to find ways to do them so that we have to find other benefits to be able to rationalize doing them. I mean, think about like some of the big blockbuster movies that they know are going to make millions of dollars, still have a hard time finding American financing for it. That's why you see all those logos. Like, I was watching a movie yesterday where it had like 10 studio logos because they had to like scrap together all of this money just to have a properly, quote unquote, properly financed production, what they consider to be proper. Yeah, so I think this, from an indie film standpoint, I think there needs to be a reckoning. And of course, I think that reckoning has been coming for a while. Back in 2013, one of the big, most shared videos on YouTube between film crews was basically this video called something about Craigslist producers, no pay, and it was this montage of these actors portraying various what they consider to be Craigslist producers, where they're asking for all of these various things that filmmakers might ask for, and at the end of each one, they'd be like, no pay. So I need a DP with a camera, no pay. Or I need an actor who can do this, this, and this, and is trained in this studio right here, no pay.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most shared videos, and I understand why it's funny, but I also think that stuff like that kind of paints the wrong picture about the reality of things.
Yeah, that's why, like, for certain things, like, especially now with, like, anything that requires stunts and fighting, it has to have pay. Because if you can't have a budget, then I question also how a safe the environment will be,
Or if it's even worth the time.
Yeah, if it's
like,
not.
Will the film get finished?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember when I first started out, I mean, there was an indie project I did that was really dangerous, did not get paid, never saw the final product. And
how was it dangerous?
So the guy who wrote it was like a foreign Tom Cruise. So he was probably about 4 feet. He wanted to come off as like a Tom Cruise badass action hero. Very sexist. Told me that girls should fight in heels because it's sexy. But again, if I wear my heels, I would be towering over him. So he had zero training whatsoever. And we were doing a fight scene, and he literally picked up a real pipe that was made out of metal. And I kind of got hit in the head, like lightly, but then I had to be like, no, we're done. So it was very dangerous. It was a non-trained, person claimed to be a martial artist, which you'll come across a lot with this type of stuff. People claim to be like they're action heroes and everything. They're very fake. They have no training whatsoever, and they do stupid shit like that where it can literally cause an injury. And thankfully I stopped him. But yeah,
I have an interesting story for you. Yeah. It's not my story, but there's this horror filmmaker named Lloyd Kaufman. He did like all those trauma films. I actually don't know what the titles of any because I don't care about these kinds of movies, but he will occasionally go on to indie films from people just starting out, and his big shtick is horror. And he was filming with some of these people who had real animal guts instead of fake guts, and real blood instead of corn syrup, which is usually what you would use.
Yeah.
And he finished, like a sport, he finished the movie, but then he did a vlog about it. He goes, this is not the proper way to make a movie. You don't go to the store and buy raw guts. You don't use real animal hearts. You don't use real blood. This is disgusting. It's unsanitary. Yeah. And he bought the film from them anyway and distributed it. But it's just, I appreciated that he used it as sort of almost like a PSA on what not to do.
Yeah. No, I have another story for you. This is like,
bring it on.
This is the thing is that, and this is when I talk about negotiating the bullshit in the beginning of the journey, is you begin to find out immediately, this is a waste of my time, or this is a good project for me. And I think that's really, really important. And sometimes this is why you have to make your mistakes and do those no-pay films, because you're going to learn a lot from these no-pay films.
Yeah.
But this one time I was supposed to do a film with this guy, and it was the most chaotic rehearsal we've ever had. I mean, it was the guy's birthday. Thankfully, this thing got fucking scrapped. It was so dangerous what was going on, or just crazy. He shows up drunk to the rehearsal. That was number one. Number two, a guy comes in. He says, hey, Johnny, I don't remember his name. You haven't paid yet for this place. And he's like, I'm going to get you. No, you need to pay now. So it was like a whole really like mafia situation was happening during the rehearsal. So he had to go up and pay the guy. And then he proceeds to tell us that our characters had to be drunk while filming, meaning we had to actually get drunk on set. And I'm like, yeah, nah, that's not happening.
So if that's like, that's so ridiculous.
Yeah. And then I can't believe it actually fell apart. Like, big fucking shocker. Like, we already knew this was going downhill. I remember talking to one of the actresses and we're like, this doesn't seem like a good idea.
That reminds me of like I'm reminded now of this production from a few years ago. I don't know. Do you remember when the Allman Brothers film made the news because, we have a dream sequence where we have to put a bed on a set of railroad tracks. So we're going to put them on a live railroad tracks. Jesus. And they set the bed up on live railroad tracks, and lo and behold, somebody got killed. And it's just like, the idea of imagination land is that it's imaginary, it's fake, it's pretend. We're just making like it's real, but we're really just making pretend. And a good actor knows how to be drunk without being drunk. Right?
Yeah, a good actor. Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. I guess some people just haven't figured out that movies are pretend.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, even audience members don't realize that movies are pretend. I mean, that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, actually, what's case in point is some years back I made a video for my sister in our hometown. I went back and she wanted to do like a lip sync musical of her and her dance troupe running around town. And at one point we came across a sign that said all dogs must be leashed. So we did a scene where they unleashed the dog and let her go. And somebody went nuts in the audience. They're like, that dog could be killed. It could have been run over, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you do realize we had somebody right off camera catching the dog. Like, we didn't actually let the dog run around town loose. But people don't get it. Even something like that was pretend.
Yeah, no, a lot of people are very, I don't want to say stupid, but, kind of stupid. Yeah.
They lack the critical thinking skills.
Yeah, really like do. I remember some people were like hating on, have you seen the movie Precious?
I haven't.
Okay, it's a very intense movie. I think it's a great story, and I'm glad it was created. And the person who plays the mom, who I can't remember this actress's name right now, she's abusive. And I remember I've been obsessed a few months ago with reading Facebook comments, just because I find them entertaining and very insightful of how opposite, like you can do something and people will either hate you or they'll love you. And it's fun to kind of watch that now. Now I don't really watch it because I don't care anymore. But I remember someone saying like, oh my God, how could she play a role like that? And blah, blah, blah. Like they're disgusted by people. And I'm like, no, these are actors. This is what they do. They're going to be someone that they're actually not. This is their career. Doesn't mean this is who they are. This is an important character that tells an amazing story. But people don't have the understanding of that.
I actually have two really good examples of that happening. So the first one was when I was in high school, might have been even middle school. Whenever Forrest Gump came out on home video, one of my teachers was like, this was really great actor who doesn't have any legs. I'm like, Gary Sinise has legs. They use special effects to remove his legs. Like, what? And they seem so betrayed by the fact that Gary Sinise had legs. And I was explaining to her, like, these are special, like, I'm a kid talking to a teacher. Yeah. And I didn't even know that much about filmmaking, but I knew that like I'd seen footage of them.
You know the footage you're talking about.
Yeah, where they wrap his legs in a green screen or some kind, and then they swing it through a hole in the port of the boat, and then digitally put in the rest of the boat later. And I'm like, that's all pretend. That's all special effects. And then later down the road, I was listening to a commentary for the movie Ghostbusters, and they were talking about how this guy who played the EPA guy who shut down the Ghostbusters facility and caused the release of all the ghosts, it would often be ridiculed in public because people didn't understand that he's not actually a bad guy. He's just really good at playing a bad guy. He's so good at playing a prick that in real life people treat him like a prick. Oh. Like it's just and he said that he couldn't shake it. He just could never shake it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Do you know the bicycle Peloton or that stationary bike?
With the woman in that commercial?
Yeah, did you hear about that story with the act?
Yeah, she ended up on Ryan Reynolds. Is it Ryan Reynolds? Was it? She ended up in another commercial because of it.
She ended up not in the commercial?
Well, she was in the Peloton commercial. Who's the guy who did Deadpool? Is that Ryan Reynolds?
That's Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
Yeah, so he ended up bringing her onto like his liquor commercial. So like, because she got so much shit for the Peloton commercial that he's like, well, why don't you be in my, I think he does like, I don't know if it's whiskey or what liquor he sells, but he's like, why don't you be in my next commercial for this liquor product be drinking because of all the shit that you got. And so they made a scene out of it. And so she ended up kind of,
I didn't know that. See, I heard the story that the male actor was torn apart for fat shaming the wife in the commercial.
I believe that, but she ended up like
worked for the company, came to one of my jobs and told us that story, and I was like, what? Like, and he had to explain to people like, I'm an actor, like, please stop.
Yeah, it's I believe that actually. I never heard of that, but I heard that like the woman was also getting some flack for doing the commercial, and then she ended up, and then Ryan ended up inviting her to be part of sort of we'll call it a whiskey commercial just for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah.
To promote this drink, and So they created this scene where her and her friends are just like out of it. They couldn't stand all the press. You know, I mean, that's the vibe of the
Yeah,
commercial.
yeah.
I just thought that was really
I
clever.
love it. That's actually, I'm gonna have to look that up. That sounds really clever. I love Ryan.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I love like stories about him. Watching how he is with his wife and Hugh Jackman on Instagram. Like,
He's got a good sense of how to use his public persona.
he really does. Yeah, that's a great actor.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. It's people. I don't know. People don't have the capacity fully to understand what art is. They just don't. I feel like it's gotten
Yeah.
worse over the years.
Yeah, I found too when I was in my MFA program and even in my undergrad, because I studied creative writing in both my undergrad and my MFA, people who I thought were really understood the creative process and understood that fiction is fiction kept attributing what they read to the author. So, oh, this author's clearly depressed. No, the story is about depression. It's the
Yeah.
characters. Just because it's in first person doesn't mean it's the first person of the author. Like,
Right, right.
and and these are people who I 100% thought would know better. It just didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I guess you just that's going to be the problem. I mean, it's not. I don't consider it a big problem, but that's just going to be part of the reality of creation. It's just you're going to run into people like that.
Yeah, it's true. There's some people who are just not gonna fully understand a project's meaning or something like that.
Yeah. So
Way of the journey.
yeah. So you have any questions? Do you have anything you want to discuss?
No.
What do you want the world to know about you?
What do I want the world to know about me? Oh.
Yeah. What do you not want them to know?
What should we not tell them? Yeah. I don't know. I'm a nice person. I don't know. I like pizza. What do I want the world? I don't know. I think at this point, I think I'm just still developing things, and I feel like there's nothing really to share. I think I'm at this point now in life where it's just like, oh, just wait and see.
I want to see you start a podcast.
You want to see? I don't
I
know.
would totally subscribe to that.
No, thank you. You'd be my one subscriber. So
Well, no. You'd be surprised. I think the motivation sector is probably the more profitable in terms of podcasts.
yeah.
That's the people I'm mostly networked with, and that's, I had author Amy Morin on last week, and she
Oh
wrote
yeah, I
the
want to
the
check that
book,
one out. I haven't checked
the
that one out.
13 Things series, and honestly, like the moment it went live, I just had all these motivational personalities connecting with me.
Wow.
So that might be a good way to kind of finance your endeavors.
That's a good idea because like I really enjoyed doing my vlog, but I didn't enjoy the camera process because I'm someone I want to talk. I don't want to have to worry about recording. I don't want to have to worry about lighting. I finally just got a better setup, but I
I
don't really
can,
doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. I same here. Like I started this on YouTube, and I just got rid of it straight away. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't like camera. We're using camera now just because it's easier to talk on
Yeah,
camera,
yeah.
but we're not going to end up with camera footage.
Right, of course.
But yeah, I mean, I could tell you exactly what to get, and I could give you a list of minimum equipment to make this work for you. And it's so
That would be
doable. It's so accessible.
Yeah, that would be a really great idea because one of my goals right now is I'm in the process, especially just taking advantage of this pandemic, is one of my things is I really want to also start a service and a business. Not only do I want to act, but I also want to create my own sources of income. I
Yeah,
like working for other people. It's not my thing. And I always want to make sure I have business that's not just acting.
yeah,
My whole background is psychology, and I'm currently working as an ABA therapist, and I always really wanted to like help people develop and everything. So I'm also studying to get like certificate for behavioral techniques. And then I kind of have this plan going, but eventually my goal is to start a service, but I also want to create content. So a podcast actually might be very beneficial.
Yeah. And, one of my biggest philosophies when it concerns income is to have it from a multitude of places, from a multitude of businesses
I agree.
and people.
Absolutely agree.
Because, and that's honestly a philosophy I adopted from a multimillionaire I used to work with who also has a podcast, but he also has an investment company. He also owns a bunch of companies.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, so he's clearly somebody who knows what he's doing. And so I adopted that for myself. And so, yeah, I definitely 100% support you doing that and would totally love to advise you on how to get that moving. Even if you don't have guests straight away, or if you don't want guests, there's ways to do them where you're just kind of talking to, it's almost like a radio DJ. You're just talking to whoever's out there tuning in.
I kind of like that more than the vlog. That's great.
Yeah. Vlogs. I think of vlogs and I think of some teenage YouTuber and so I got this from the mall and I'm putting it on my eyelashes.
I'm one of those people that when I start seeing other people doing things that I've already started doing, I immediately lose interest in it. And I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore. I started doing my vlogs and I would have talks with people, and the next thing I know, they're creating posts and motivational stuff. And I sometimes I've even seen people not use my own words, but they're heading in the direction of things that they've complimented me on, and now they're doing it. And I'm just I know I'm not gonna take credit, but I'm just saying, well, now I don't want to do it because now look at it like this. I don't want to do it. I've lost interest, and I don't like doing what everyone else is doing. I want to do my own thing, and that's you can look into that and psychoanalyze that, but it's.
Well, I think maybe you see them doing it too well or maybe too badly, and then it's just how am I coming off? I don't know. That's kind of how it happens with me.
I was like, how am I coming off? That's exactly what it is. It's I don't want to be doing it like that. That's not the method. And
that's why I think podcasting works, because you don't have to see yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do video, and two, once you put it out there, you're not going to listen to it. And you don't need to listen to it. It's done. It's in the world, and you can, sometimes I listen to them after the fact if it's a big one. Most of the time, I just put them out there and I go do dishes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think because my problem is when I see the vlog, it's I should have the camera angle like this. I should have the lighting like that. Those are the details I do look at. And then I obsess over, not obsess, but I just get frustrated with. And I'm I have to reach. And I live in a very small studio. So it's definitely one of my things. So I think the podcast actually does sound like a great idea. That sounds more in alignment with the things I'm doing right now and where I'm heading.
Yeah, I feel like that too, just based on some of your posts.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'd like to see that move forward.
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely take your advice. Because I even with the podcast that I listened to that you've done already, I'm wow, that's some really interesting stuff that you've said, with creating a business and other things. And I do agree, you should have multiple sources of income. It should not be one source. It really should.
Yeah, one source is sort of the recipe for disaster when something like a pandemic happens. Honestly, we're on sort of, one of the things that I'm interested in this podcast is being really straightforward and honest about my life and stuff. And so I've said before, we started out fine and we were fine for most of the pandemic. And only because we had a multitude of income sources.
Yeah.
And since, we're now at a point where those are drying up, right? And so we got a lot further than a lot of families. And a lot of those families really just, they were people who were employed and they depended on that one employer. And whenever, every era of my life, which is mostly high school through my 30s, my early 30s, I was dependent on one source of income, and I was always poor. I was always barely making ends meet. I was always in debt. And as soon as I started pulling money from a multitude of places at the same time, and that can be whatever people can think of. There's no solid answer for any individual person. It's going to be different. And so things started working out a little bit more. I was able to put a little bit more into my projects. I was able to put more into sort of building our life in this apartment. I even put up my first decorations a few years ago, which
That's
were
amazing.
comic books. They were encapsulated comic books, which one of them is a Raphael #1 when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, their original comic book run from the 1980s.
Wow.
I got an original Raphael #1 when they introduced this character, Casey Jones, and it's signed by Kevin Eastman, and he doodled the Ninja Turtle face on it. And it's encapsulated and rated. And I'm like, that's going to be my first decoration when I can finally afford decorations. And it was.
Yeah, that's amazing. So those are the stories I definitely want to pick your brain about because I know I'm in that part now where I'm ready to start expanding and creating my own services. And that's I'm kind of at this point where I'm gathering these final skills.
Yeah,
I want to head in that direction, but I definitely will have to pick your brain because it's like,
definitely.
you
Well,
know,
I'm available. And honestly, like, I love the idea of being able to, like, sort of be a point, one of hopefully will be many point persons for somebody starting up something that will help others down the road.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
See, and like, how would you learn this? Have you not gone on this journey and made
Yeah.
mistakes and get your ass handed to you? And then how you've managed to explode into like these different avenues. Isn't
You
that
know, I wouldn't trust anybody who hasn't had their ass handed to them at any point in their journey. You
exactly?
have to be defeated for me to respect you.
And this is exactly why, again, like at this point, circling back to the beginning of our conversation, which is amazing, why I have no longer been able to relate to people because I'm like, I haven't really seen you gone through much. I haven't seen you get your ass handed to you.
Well, most people just like they avoid it. They avoid the
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah.
You know, that
Which I,
was one of the things that I learned about in my undergrad. I was a member of the Student Leadership Institute at the State University of New York, and it was all rooted in conflict resolution because they understood that if you're going to do anything worth a damn, you're going to have to be in conflict and you're going to have to learn to deal with it. And for the most part, people would just rather avoid conflict, and that
yeah.
amounts to, unfortunately, a very boring, unproductive life.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah. That's true.
Do you so you listen to podcasts?
I do.
What do
Yeah.
you listen to?
Mainly right now, I'm going through a Conan O'Brien phase. I just started downloading investing ones, like investing for dummies kind of thing, because I want to expand more in making investments. But yeah, I'm really big on Conan O'Brien right now. I mean, his podcast, he's really funny, but what I enjoy about it is he has some very heartfelt conversations with other performers about life and stuff. And I find it very enjoyable because they'll talk about the journey and they'll talk about their struggles. Like I listened to a really good one with Kevin Hart, who also talked about like why he worked so hard, all the things he went through, all the, like, even like systemic racism and all these type of struggles. And it was very fascinating. I listened to one with Howard Stern and him. They talk about 9/11. They talked about being a leader and then also changing perspectives as they've grown up and gotten older. And like even, I know he talked about rape, which was really interesting. He learned about rape and identifying it through Amy Schumer. So it's like they actually, like, you would think these would be very funny, superficial conversations, but they're actually very deep
Yeah.
and thought out. And then occasionally you're actually laughing pretty hard. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, he's one of the last remaining late night hosts that I think knows how to interview people. And he
Yes.
also just has a conscience about what to discuss.
Yeah, yeah.
And his
He
show has
really does.
shifted in a way where, I mean, I don't know if his podcast is his show or if it's separate, but I know his show, he really changed it over the past couple of years from just being a comedy guy at a desk to his format is he sits in a chair and faces the person and there's a little coffee table. And it's just that shift in format tells me everything about what he's really going for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can tell he really cares about people he's talking to. He wants to connect, and I think that's why the podcast is about like Conan needs a friend. Like that's the whole theme of the podcast, which is really hilarious. But he literally is trying to connect with the people interviewing. And you, again, yeah, you wouldn't expect that from a comedian, but he does it so well, and I really appreciate that because not many people want that anymore.
Yeah. And yeah, or maybe they do and they don't realize it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Because I think we all need it, but then we get so distracted by the computer, by the
Oh,
phone.
the social media. Yeah, that I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think we crave connection, and it's just coming out in such an ass backwards way now. I mean, like, people I see now will talk about misery in their social media posts because they want to be heard, but it becomes is comfort by a obscene amount of likes, you know,
Yeah,
which is just a superficial way to like express yourself and to be heard. It's very weird. It's very, very weird. I've been analyzing that a lot too. This.
yeah. I make a conscious effort not to like if it's not something that's totally head over heels about.
Yeah.
But what I'll do instead is if I see somebody posting a lot, I'll reach out to them directly and I'll be like, "Hey, do you want to come on a podcast, or do you want to have a phone call? Do you want to, do so?" Like I'll find another way to connect with them because I
Yeah.
don't feel like I would. What I'm trying to do basically is act the way I want kind of more people to be. So
Yeah.
I would rather, if they see me, for example, posting lots of stuff that maybe I'm posting too much, or maybe why is he posting this? Maybe reach out to me, or, you know, reach out to your cousin who's posting a lot of nonsensical stuff that, are they looking? Because to me, it's a behavior observation where like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm observing that there's something going on the other end.
Yeah.
And the one thing that it comes down to, I think, is just loneliness. And most of the time, I feel like I'm right. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes people just don't know how to use social media. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I feel like when I see a lot of just nonsensical posting, the most sensible solution for me is just to reach out to them directly. Don't like any of it. And because I don't know what the solution is for the social media problem. I don't know how it's going to change, even though currently the government is suing Facebook. I don't know if that's really going to change the way people behave on social media, the way they lean in on it in a very unhealthy way. And so the way I use it now is just it's really rooted in observing behavior and deciding whether it's time to reach out to a person directly or not. Yeah.
I don't know. I have such a hard time with social media now, mainly where I've just lost all interest in it. Except TikTok. I go on TikTok because like it's just entertaining. You know, people will do things that really make me laugh really hard. Or sometimes I've now manipulated the algorithm where occasionally I'll see like a conspiracy theory or alien stuff or something on a ghost story. And I'm like, great, let's keep that algorithm going.
Do you like UFOs?
I love that type of stuff. It's entertaining. And I'm just like, yes, cool. Aliens are coming. Great. Like, so TikTok is definitely a guilty pleasure. Instagram, I try to avoid. I really am at the point now where I avoid Instagram.
Yeah, I haven't been on there in a long time.
I used to post all the time and I just find it, I find it very difficult because, I get so frustrated where I used to get more frustrated where people are posting like, you know, girls doing stuff and everything. And they have like 500 likes and I'll be posting about like, hey, something motivating and inspiring, and people don't give two flying fucks about it, or something truthful and realistic. And
I think that's what one of the things that gets under my skin about Instagram is
yeah,
I see time and time again multitude of personalities doing really great stuff with it who have next to no followers, no likes, no acknowledgments. And then you'll have somebody in like some nightwear or a bikini or
yeah,
something like that who's not doing any good service to the world except maybe showing her belly, and
yeah,
she's got thousands of likes and
yeah.
thousands of followers.
And then these are the same people who are trying to post like motivational stuff, and the only reason it's getting liked is because bra showing and everything's hanging out. Like, then it's just so frustrating because what are we teaching about self-respect? What are we
Yeah.
teaching Like I'll post sometimes a workout picture, which is fine, like whatever. But there's a difference between that, I feel like, and then there's a way you can do it where it's also very dirty. I don't know, but it just infuriates me. And then Facebook's just become like a graveyard of I don't even know what anymore. I just can't even go on there anymore. It's either very political. Like I now am actually unfollowing people on Facebook, on Instagram, over and over.
One of the great features that they have now is mute somebody for a month.
Yeah, instead
And
I just
I've been doing that left and right all autumn.
yeah, or I can stay friends with them and unfollow them. I've done that to a few people because I got to keep my numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
really, especially like that's the confusing part about being an actor is like they talk about social media being so important, but then I have such a resistance to it because I don't feel like it's doing anything for me. Like if I was on TikTok, I can understand how people become TikTok personalities. I get that, but that's not really what I want to be spending my time doing.
Well, I think it's ultimately something that, as an asset to the business, right? Whatever
Yeah,
business we're in,
yeah,
it becomes an asset only when you have a project ready to go out.
exactly.
But before that, it's just maintaining and growing it, and that's
Yeah.
excruciating because of everything we just discussed.
Yeah, and that's the problem is like I don't always want to share pictures. I'm not someone like the selfies get really boring to me. There's no context to it. Like I know there's a girl I follow who's like mom's like, she's not doing too well and like they post selfies and it's like and then they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go see my family," and they're posing and stuff. And I'm like, hopefully they're not going to listen to this podcast, but they're hearing me say this. But it's just like, to me, it's very weird. Like you're posing and making a cutie fish face, and you're also talking about something very serious, and it's confusing. And then that gets a lot of likes, and then I don't know how to feel about that. So that becomes like I don't know. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
No, it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense, and I
Yeah.
agree with it. And I don't think they'll listen to the podcast. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. Like I hate the whole maintaining thing, the selfies. I feel like there should always be good content. If you're gonna put it out there, it should be content that's worth it.
Yeah, something that is meaningful. Well, for me, it's like I never started out this way, but I've shifted to this idea that if something happened to me today,
Yeah.
what would immediately be left behind?
Yeah.
So far, it's a work in progress film, a
Yeah.
couple of films that I like, and some episodes of the podcast that I think are useful.
Yeah.
I want to build on that. And so
Yeah.
every time I put something out into the public sphere, I'm thinking about that now. And I never really used to. I think it's because as soon as I hit 36 years of age, I started really hardcore thinking of that. And I know that's young, but to me, it's
Yeah.
not. Like, to me, I
Right.
feel like I'm old.
Right.
And so,
You're still far from 40 then.
huh?
You're still far from 40.
I'm a few months from 40.
Yeah, that's still far.
I'm 39 now.
Yeah.
Which is a weird because I don't have a single gray hair on me, which I guess I've been stress free for the most part. But
Good for you. Good for you.
but yeah,
Well, actually, that is pretty impressive. Thinking about it, I know people my age. I'm 31 who have gray hairs coming out. I'm like, damn, like,
they're stressed out. They probably are
yeah,
economists. Uh, yeah, I find a lot of people in finance go gray quick.
yeah. I mean, there's something to it where I do see some of my friends who look very aged.
I actually got one gray at one point in my early to mid 30s before I went back to school. I did my first and only SAG after a ultra low budget contracted film, and at the end of it, I had one gray hair, and I'm like, I'm never doing SAG again. Like,
Wow.
at least not as long as I'm responsible financially. And yeah, I think that screams volumes about kind of our society when so many people in their 30s do get grays
Mm-hmm.
and the stress of society.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's true. That's why you have to really live the life that you want. You really, really do. I mean, I feel like there's so much to that. And that puts a lot of pressure on us, and a lot of stress on our bodies.
Have you ever read the book? It's Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
talks about that in the intro, where like there's this one society, they eat like garbage food, but they're the healthiest in terms of their like heart
Like in
health.
Germany or something,
No,
right?
no, it's in like I don't know if it was Pennsylvania or Ohio,
Okay.
but like it's the secluded town, and the reason is because it's just a stress-free
Yeah.
place to live, and there's not a lot of outside influence, and so they just had the lowest rate of heart disease, despite the fact that their diets were complete shit. Like,
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I really do believe that what you're actually, you really have to save yourself. And sometimes doing things that are going to liberate your soul and your freedom is what's going to save your health.
I think we should end on that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a great quote. And I think that's ultimately so. Whenever I do these, I'm always trying to find a thesis of an episode so I know what to title it and I know what to talk about in the description. I think that's it. I think that's what we came to.
Yes.
And end up high. We're going to end on a high note.
Woo!
And so
We did it.
we did it. We're done.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool.
I'm going to go eat breakfast finally. I just
Oh
woke
my
up
gosh,
at 1.
yeah, go do it. All right, it was so good to see you. Thank you so much for doing video too with me. I know it's hard, but I really, it was nice to be able to see you and tell Jan.
It's fine. We know each other.
Yeah. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.
All right, everybody. That was Lis LoCascio, actor and martial arts expert, action star. She was in my movie Fractals, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.